Welcome to the How to Write Online workshop. I'm David Perell. I'll be your host for the next hour or so. And what we're going to do is, can't believe it, I've been writing online for 7 years. So that's so long. I've never done anything for that long. And basically in that time, though, I've learned so much about this craft, about how to gather ideas, come up with cool ideas, interesting ideas, fun ideas, stuff that you want to share with other people, just get swept up in the intoxication of intellectual life, and then how to then put those ideas on paper, write from conversation, surround yourself with people who you can engage with on an intellectual level. And then eventually, okay, you're putting words on the page, but you want people to read your stuff, right? You don't want to just be shouting into a void and hearing crickets of indifference in your life. You want to actually get your ideas heard, right? And so if you're here, you're interested in doing the same thing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down those 3 steps, and we're going to be talking about the three pillars of the rite of passage method. The first is writing from abundance, the second, writing from conversation, and the third, writing in public. But before we do that, you see 4 people on the screen right now. I'm just one of them. And first, I want to introduce the director of content for Rite of Passage, Michael Dean, who is going to be sharing some reflections on a lot of the ideas in this workshop. He'll be sharing them with you today, too. So, Michael, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. Michael Dean here. Man, it's been a few years now writing online. Like, what a journey it's been. I'm excited to be full-time on the team this year. My role is to create excellent content around the craft of writing, and also in Rite of Passage to make sure every student gets the best possible feedback. So really kind of just, writing online is unbelievable, and excited to be here. Hand it over to Becca.
Hi, everybody. I'm Becca. I'm the producer for Rite of Passage, so I'm kind of in charge of all the AV and everything. This is one of my favorite workshops of the year. I'm so excited to be here with you all today and to get to listen to this workshop.
Hey guys, I'm Will Mannon, course director for Rite of Passage. Excited to talk to you guys today about the content of today's workshop. We have a Rite of Passage cohort coming up starting March 2nd. So we'll talk about that more towards the end. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat area and a Q&A area. Please put all questions in the Q&A area. We'll curate those, address those at the end. 2 topics for questions. 1, the content of today's workshop. Number 2, please ask any questions you have about Rite of Passage, the course, how it works, and we'll talk about that in a bit. David, back to you.
Yeah, so next cohort does start March 2nd. The launch window is actually officially open now. So if this workshop feels like something that you want to spend the next 5 weeks doing and thinking about, join us for Rite of Passage. We were just, I was just emailing a student this morning, and he's running to be sort of a politician for one of the major American cities. I was so excited. And, it's just people like that who are in the cohort, and hundreds of them from around the world. And so what Rite of Passage is really designed for is to help you accelerate your career by writing online. And a lot of these ideas, if you want to learn more about them, you can listen to the Rite of Passage podcast. And basically what that is, and we're going to put a link in the chat right now, what that is just a bunch of really mini lessons on ideas like note-taking and imposter syndrome and building a personal monopoly. And so if you want, throw that on your phone, and then you can reflect on this hour by listening to that later. So the premise for Rite of Passage came from this realization that I had that most writers are just hacking things together as they go. They're trying to figure out subsystem here, subsystem there. And it kind of reminds me of college. I had a friend, it was a college roommate. His name was Walker, and so gracious, so kind, and gave me this speaker system. And I remember having to bring together all the copper wires. I had to order them on Amazon, and I just couldn't figure it out. And then I didn't have a copper wire cutter. I guess you need special scissors for that. And so I had to try to bring it all together, always break. And it was so frustrating because I always break, if I had parties at my house or something. And I felt like I was just, figuring things out with YouTube videos, whatever. And it was one thing here, one thing there. And it was just no unified system. And one day I got a Sonos, and it just no wires, connects to Wi-Fi, just works perfectly, all integrated. And that is the metaphor for the kind of writing method that we've tried to create. And so the rite of passage method is built off 3 ideas, and we're going to go through all of them together. The first is writing from abundance, where you collect ideas regularly so you don't have to start writing from scratch. You know that feeling when it's like, okay, I'm going to sit down, it's you got 4 hours to write or something. You're like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write. And you're all determined, you got 2 cups of coffee today instead of 1. And you start looking at the blank page and you just get stressed out because you're like, what do I write? How do I do this? And so writing from abundance is an antidote to that problem. The second is writing from conversation. So often we think of writing as this solo experience, or you gotta go get a cabin in the woods to go write whatever it is. And unless you leave society, you're not gonna be able to write. No, writing can be a social experience. It'd be fun. You can have conversations with people, and you can surround yourself with people who ignite an intellectual fire inside of you. And then the third pillar is writing in public. Writing is just a means to an end so often, and you can create opportunities for yourself, and you can create serendipity in your life by sharing ideas with other people. And so we're going to go through exactly how you do all 3 of those things. And so the first that I want to start off with is write from abundance. And I'm going to plant my flag in the ground, ladies and gentlemen. You need a note-taking system. I'm serious. I think that this helps so much. At least it helped me. This was like the big bang that got me started with writing. It was like before there was no universe, and then after there was universe, and it was expanding and crazy stuff started to happen. And so what that means is building this capture habit. So, you're reading books, you're reading articles, maybe you're on social media, you're reading articles on the internet, and you want to take all those things and put them in some central place that can be searched. You can go back to it over time, and your ideas are saved on a computer, which has perfect memory. Not going to forget stuff. Once it's saved, it's going to be there. And so in order to do that, you could think capturing other people's ideas, capturing your own ideas, and I want to start with capturing other people's ideas. So what ideas should you actually save? I would say 4 things: ideas that are useful, easily lost, personal, and inspiring. Useful is maybe you're working on an article, and for example, I was just working on an article this morning called Imitate Then Innovate. And I was talking to Will, who you see on the top of the screen. And he said, hey, that's just like this thing. And Will sent me a link, and I have that link saved in my notes. Now I'm going to come back to it. Happened 10 minutes ago. It's a way of life, this stuff. Things that are easily lost. A lot of interesting quotes can be easily lost. For example, I was watching a movie. I was watching Dune over the weekend. There's this great quote about leadership. And so I just was watching, popped right in, saved that quote, threw my phone on the couch, went right back to watching the movie. Things that are personal. This is when, for example, I was in London recently, and I was walking through the city, and I had all these personal observations of what is the city like? What is the vibe? What is the feel? What are my impressions of it? How does it compare to other places that I've lived? Austin, New York, San Francisco, North Carolina, all these different places. How does that compare? Saving those ideas. And then things that are inspiring. While I was in London, I also got to go see the world's largest collection of Beatles lyrics, original Beatles lyrics. And so there was this big collection of writings that Paul McCartney had written. And there's like when I was in, 4th grade, I played this album or this concert for Hey Jude, I had my little recorder and stuff. And I still remember that song. I got to see the very first time that Paul McCartney actually wrote the lyrics on the page. Save that. It's inspiring stuff, And so what you realize is that information is like food. And in order to, if you ask any chef, in order to improve the quality of your outputs, any chef would say, hey, it starts with the quality of meat you get. How fresh is your fish? How fresh is your produce? Is it being frozen, or is it being picked 2 hours before somebody's eating? They want quality produce, just like we want quality information in our writing. That's where it begins. And so what you want to focus on is you're taking highlights from ebooks, Kindle and Apple books, online articles. I recommend Instapaper. Then there's this great app called Readwise where you pay a little subscription, I don't know, like $7, $8 a month, but then everything gets saved in there. And then things automatically save into Readwise. They can pop into your note-taking system. Huge help for you. And so what you realize is once you start saving your ideas, you end up with this huge compounding asset that gives you an advantage as a writer, because you get the best of what you've ever read saved in one place for the rest of your life. And as the number of connections or the number of notes that you have increases linearly, the number of connections you can make between them increases exponentially. And so you have this linear increase in notes, but this exponential increase in connections. And then you can begin to say, hey, this thing compares with that thing, which compares to this thing. And that's when you get these really interesting connections in your thinking. Or if you forget one thing over here, it's like, hey, I need an example for that. You can pop back into your notes, find whatever it is, and then you have a really clear example for whatever it is that you're trying to say. Maybe you just need to prove something. Hey, I read a paper on that 3 years ago. I don't remember what it's called. If you don't have a note-taking system, now you got to go search that paper. Maybe that paper was open for the first 3 months and it was public knowledge, and then now it costs $74 to go pay for that paper. You're not going to pay for that. Now you've lost that information. Maybe it's been scrubbed from the internet or something. Don't let that stuff happen to you as a writer. Do the little effort to just save these ideas, build that capture habit. But that's just capturing other people's ideas. Then there's capturing your own ideas. Remember, we were talking about the capture habit earlier. You have your personal notes too. And so these are things that you're just thinking throughout your day. Will, what was that metaphor that you said yesterday about the personal notes? You're sort of adding stuff. It's like the log or whatever. What was it? It was really good.
Yeah, it was sort of like, people are very familiar with the Instagram story where you're going through your day, just filming little 10-second snippets of what's going on. And one way to think about capturing your personal ideas is, instead of filming an Instagram story, you have a little file on your Notion or even a note on your phone where you're just jotting down little observations, nuanced things you pick up as you go about your day. That can become raw material for things you then go to write about when you sit down to write.
Exactly. And then what you can do is you can write while you read. So what'll happen is I'll be reading something and I will just say, hey, like, this is interesting. You can highlight and say, I'm, thinking about, okay, like the quality of ingredients helps you with whatever your output is. And so now I start thinking about, okay, like I'm typing, I'm sort of thinking out loud, talking about reading bad articles. It's all very meta. And what I'm doing is I'm thinking while I'm in that state of reading, I'm writing that down. So then when I come back to write about information filters in the future, I can then refer to this note, refer to that quote, and give myself some context. It's the same thing if I'm reading an article or something. I'll do the same thing. I'll just pop in and just start taking notes. And most people, they're just reading. They're just consuming. They're not actually engaging with the material. And so something they read 9 months ago, like a year and a half ago, like those ideas that you had when you were reading that thing on an airplane or at night on a Sunday, where did that thinking go? It probably is just withered away, lost to time. And if you're interested, I have a video called Building an Idea Factory with Ali Abdal that we're going to drop the link in the chat, which really goes into, okay, how do you then use your own ideas, other people's ideas, to then begin to build this idea factory where you're just always coming up with new ways of thinking. And then what helps too is you build a digital diary. My favorite book from 2021, and I'm sort of embarrassed by it. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm like one of those guys. If you come up to me and you go, oh, David, I need a book recommendation. I'm somebody who wants to give you a book you've never heard of, a book you've never seen before, some obscure book that's going to make me look smart or something. Wow, David, really reads outside of the canon, what everybody else is doing. No, my favorite book of last year is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. It's like #1 best-selling book when I bought it at the Atlanta airport. It's like you walk into the bookstore, it's right there. No shame whatsoever. It is such a good book. And the way that he wrote it was he wrote in his diary for like 30 years or something, collected all these notes, and then all these photos, all these quotes, and then he basically went off into the woods and came back. And what he did was collected all the ideas, all the stories, all the funny stuff, the insights he had, all that stuff, and he turned into a book. And it was so much better, he said, because he had collected all those notes throughout all those years. So I do the same thing. You know, McConaughey's got photos. So I got photos of Will and I recording live modules for Rite of Passage, college graduation, me and my little sister. And what helps me is when I'm trying to get notes is what I'll do is I'll use this app called Otter. And the app, what it allows you to do is, my sister just texted me. How crazy is that? She just texted me. I just saw a little notification pop up. That's crazy. And so I'll use Otter, and what I can do is I can speak into my phone and it gives me this automatic transcript. And so what that then allows me to do is I feel you. Like taking notes can take a while. You know, you got to block off time. What I'll just do is I'll open up Otter. If I got a 20-minute walk home or something, I'll just talk into my phone and it'll auto transcribe, and it's exceptional. It's exceptional. And then what I'll do is I'll take that and I'll move it into that centralized note-taking system. So if I have a thought and I'm like, hey, my mind's going a little right now, I can save that idea for the rest of my life. And so I can now return to things that I thought about years ago. And so in Rite of Passage, we have this video. It's actually probably top 5 favorite things I've ever produced, a 47-minute video on exactly how you build this information capture setup, exactly how you do it, very tactical. And then we sort of have a strategic look at exactly how to do this. Go super in depth on this in week 1. And so some questions to ask yourself are like, in terms of things to save, what are your go-to stories? What are the stories that always get a laugh, that always make people go, pretty good story? Save those things. What are things that are insightful? You know, in what ways do you surprise your peers with your knowledge or expertise? Are there any memories that you don't want to forget? Or experiences, once in a lifetime moments and opportunities, or just super mundane things? You know, like you're having dinner at a restaurant that you've been to a million times, and now you notice something that you'd never noticed before. Like, for example, the mundane things I think are sometimes more interesting. At some point, I'm going to write this definitive guide to Austin, Texas, where I live now. And I've just been collecting notes, sort of comparing it to other cities for a year and a half. It's just all saved in one central place. And actually, it reminds me of this story. So I don't know, this was probably 4 years ago. I had lunch with a friend at this really good burger place in New York City, sort of in Greenwich Village, West Village, actually. And it's called Corner Bistro. Phenomenal spot. Next time you're in New York, you got to go. It's like $12 burgers. You get a beer, you have some good fries, you dip them in ketchup. Phenomenal meal. And I had this pretty good conversation. And I learned a lot about my friend's psychology, which I thought was very revealing about modern culture. And so I was taking the subway home, and I just took some notes, had them all here. And then I took those notes as I was writing this essay, Peter Thiel's Religion, the most popular thing I've ever published, and took those notes. And then there's a section in here about sort of millennials and about my friend who I'd had dinner with. And I was able to write this piece with the fidelity, write about that experience with the fidelity as if it had happened yesterday, because I had taken those notes for this specific section. And I took that, then made a YouTube video out of it. And so you just come home, you get 10 minutes taking notes, and boom, you then can create so many different things. And I actually had somebody email me requesting for me to spin out that specific section from the original article, turn it to its own thing because he liked it so much. And so what you realize is that modern writing is assembled. And Michael is going to pop in here to talk about what that means.
Hey, everybody. So what I have here is a Miro diagram. And what we're going to do is in 2 minutes, go through the entirety of David's system, right? So we'll look into how he finds ideas, right? How he then assembles them in packages so that they're ready to use when he sits down to write. So we're going to deconstruct it step by step. So first thing here, these little squares on the left, imagine each one represents, a piece of content, right? Tweets in the feed, could be articles at lunch. It could be these intriguing thoughts that happen as you walk, right? The capture habit is about the awareness to bring all of this stuff, not all of it, but select things from the flurry into your private system. So now imagine you're reading this article. This is a great Matthew Ball piece. You've made highlights, you've made observations. What's the next step from this point? Right? If you look into an info capture system, when you start, it can get pretty overwhelming, pretty crazy, pretty fast, right? So what's the one thing that will kind of help this, right? What's the one thing to convert your inputs into outputs? And what David does is he assigns these inputs to notebooks, right? He uses them in Evernote. It could be a Roam tag, it can be a Notion, but there's hot notebooks and there's cold notebooks. And it's worth looking at the difference between them. So a hot notebook is really specific. It's a potential essay. You can see each one has a title, right? Laws of the internet, the microwave economy, Peter Thiel's religion. They're specific. If you look at cold notebooks, these are general topics, people. Maybe there's no immediate essay you have in mind, but like David said, he's collecting all of this ammo on Austin, and eventually he's gonna write that guide. So I think this image is important because it really shows where writing from abundance starts from, right? You don't just start from the blank page, but the idea is you look through your note-taking system and you find where are the constellations of ideas, right? Which essays or topics are bursting with notes and are ready to be written. So on the right here, we're going to look at the microwave economy, right? This is an article David wrote. You can see up top, he has some personal reflections. He has his shiny dime, which is the main idea. But when you get into the body of the piece, you can see how there's these 5 references, right? And you can imagine these all came from his note-taking system. There's books on technology. There's a children's books he's referencing. There's thoughts on Taoism, on motorcycles, on productivity concepts. These ideas, you might never, associate them together, but little by little, he's adding notes into his system and they all came together. So just to overview, I think what this shows is basically writing doesn't have to be this high friction process. It's a very gradual system of assembling notes, and then you can just very easily peek in, see when it's ready, and it's almost done from the moment that you start.
Exactly. And part of the reason that in Rite of Passage, we spend so much time building the system is we want it to be frictionless for you to get ideas into your system so that the best stuff you've ever had, you can immediately access. Will, what was that thing you were saying right before we got on about articles and people losing them?
Yeah. So just imagine the past year. How many articles did you read online, right? On your phone, on your computer, just how many articles did you read? Okay, now how much of the information from those articles did you retain or use in any way? If you're anything like me, I used to read so many articles per year just in my browser, and I wasn't using them. If you join Rite of Passage, we'll show you this particular tool you can use to highlight the best parts of each article you read, save that in your info capture system. Then when you go to write, you can draw from that information from those articles and use that as building blocks for your essays. So something to think about. Improving the way you consume information is a huge part of the writing process.
Absolutely. And so what you realize as you begin to take notes is that you can read to connect the dots and then read to collect the dots and write to connect them. And so you're reading, and what you're doing is, like, often when you're taking notes, every specific idea is just a dot. So you got this dot, this dot, this dot, this dot, and you don't really think much of it. You're just sort of collecting dots. It's what you do when you're reading, when you're living life, having conversations. But then you pop in, you have an epiphany, and all of a sudden those dots, just with a little change, they become a puppy. And it was always there, but you just needed to connect them. But you can only connect them once you've been collecting them. That's what it is to write from abundance, to have all these dots that you can work with and build upon. It reminds me of the documentarian Ken Burns. And he has this 11.5-hour Civil War documentary, which he culled from 22.73 miles of film. I mean, that's like almost an entire marathon worth of like little strips of film that go into a documentary. So much video. And he says that it's like maple syrup, that the way that you make maple syrup is you need about 40 or 50 gallons of sap for 1 gallon of that sweet, sweet, sweet maple syrup that we get to douse on our pancakes. Writing's the same way. You're collecting the dots of sap. And then what you're doing is with books that you read, with articles, you're squeezing the sugar out of it and you're turning it into something sweet and delicious. That then is the process of writing from abundance. And the way that you determine what you're going to focus on is you write from conversation, which is the second pillar of the rite of passage method. So with writing from conversation, the way it begins is with the content triangle. And what you realize is that writing doesn't have to happen alone. It can happen in a collaborative process. And I'm going to show you exactly what this content triangle looks like. So writing doesn't have to happen alone. It can be a social experience. And I'm reminded of a writer whose name is Henry David Thoreau. You've probably heard of him. Walden Pond. I remember my senior year, we read his book. And it was in a nature class. And basically what he did was he left society, went to Walden Pond for a couple years, like mid 19th century. And he wrote this book for 2 years. And this is Walden. And this is how a lot of people think of how you need to write. You just need to like escape society, cancel your plans, don't see your kids, don't talk to mom and dad. You just got to focus, get off work. But honestly, that's not realistic, especially for online writers who got to be writing a lot. You got to be prolific. So what is the alternative? What is the alternative? How do we think about this? I think a really good model for us to follow is James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, which I think he said was the #1 best-selling book in the entire world last year. #1. So he's somebody who's worth learning from. And I made a YouTube video about him. And I linked to an interview that I want to share with you. Here's what he said. Before James ever published the book, he had already tested out all of his ideas on his target audience using a theory that I call the content triangle. The content triangle allows you to test out new ideas in public and then listen to people's responses and double down on what works. So let's think of your ideas as a triangle, where every single time you share them, you go up the triangle. And as you do, the ideas become more advanced and more distilled. Because at each stage, you are probing other people for responses and feedback. So start by bringing up your idea in a casual conversation and pay attention to how your listener reacts. Do their eyes light up at a certain part? Well, double down on that idea. They're interested in it. Then push it out on a social platform like Twitter. Take the feedback you get from those posts and work it into an article. Then once that article has been published, capture that feedback and, I don't know, use it to edit an idea in your newsletter or something. So what sticks out to me there is just that cycle. So you have a conversation, then you pop into you're getting feedback from the conversation, then you're sharing, maybe in a newsletter, maybe through a tweet, maybe through an article. And you're always sharing, listening, improving, sharing, listening, improving, always sensing what works. And James himself said, this is largely what I did to create Atomic Habits. Write articles about habits for 5 years, email short articles every week, learn, refine, and improve ideas, compile them into book form, and then use the audience created along the way to launch the book. That's how he did it. And so that's what we teach in Rite of Passage. This system, this way of life, where you're writing from conversation, what's cool about that is because you're talking about these engaging and rich ideas, you're also cultivating incredibly deep friendships. And the thing is, like, you don't even need to have a gazillion people in your life who you can have interesting conversations with, because you can also just use voice transcription and say, as you're talking about something, one of the things you find is the mind is quite good actually at knowing what ideas are interesting and what ideas are a slog. You can actually sense that as you speak. You can sort of tell when you're on one and you're getting some momentum and all of a sudden your heartbeat's going up and you're like, yes, 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 right? You're in that flow. And then sometimes you're saying something, you're like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. I'm just sort of rambling here. And you're getting a lot from that process. And you can just do that with voice transcription. And the thing is, you're taking notes and stuff. You're taking your own ideas, other people's ideas, and you realize that you don't need to be 100% original with your ideas. There's this book that you almost certainly know, Sapiens by Yuval Harari, bestseller recommended by Obama, Bill Gates. And I was reading this New Yorker profile of him. I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested in this guy. Let's see what there is to learn. And this line just jumped out of me. I thought it was so interesting and so revealing. Harari goes, I thought, this is so banal. There is absolutely nothing in there that is new. I'm not an archaeologist. I'm not a primatologist. I mean, I did zero new research. It was really reading the kind of common knowledge and just presenting it in a new way. That's what he said. Best-selling book. Seen it all over the world, that thing. The red letters, the white page. Same thing. There's 1,010 biographies of Winston Churchill. 1,010 biographies of Winston Churchill. Like, you don't need to be the first person to write about whatever it is that you're writing about. And when you realize that by writing from conversation, you can identify of the things that you're picking up on what's interesting. But now I want to really get into, okay, so these are comments about writing from abundance and writing from conversation that I think are things that you're doing away from the page. Now, how about in terms of actual writing? What do you do? How do you improve that? And we have a motto in Write a Passage where we say, don't just write words, write music. And what's so cool about this idea is it's so intuitive, it's going to freak you out. It's so intuitive that you already know this. Who is it who said that all learning is just memory? Some famous philosopher that if I remembered the name of, I would sound smart. But this is a really good example. Okay, here we go. This is from Gary Provost. I love this. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. Here, everything's sort of the same sentence length, right? There's not a lot of difference and rhythm and change. But now listen, I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music, the writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use short sentences and I use sentences of medium length. And sometimes when I'm certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with the impetus of a crescendo. The roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbals, sounds that say, listen to this. It is important. So write with a combination of short, medium, and long sentences. Create a sound that pleases the reader's ear. Don't just write words. Write music. Michael.
So it's really interesting to deconstruct professional writers and actually see this concept in practice. And here we have writers writing very different kinds of things, but they're all writing musically, right? What we've done is we've taken each sentence and we've put it on a line, right? So by reading the right edge, you can almost instantly see how they're going in and out with the length of their sentences. And so in Rite of Passage, we try to create exercises that make it really easy to learn these tricks of craft. So in this case, we actually gave them this shape and they had to write within these constraints. Think of it like training wheels or bumpers, right? It's a way to practice rhythm. And then here it is. This is a published Rite of Passage essay from Charlie Bleecker. You can see she's totally nailed the craft of rhythm. And yeah, just a reminder to, if you're trying to really hone this craft as you draft, just do a sentence per line, right? You can read the right edge and it's a barometer for how musical your writing is.
Michael, what I love about this is how simple it is. And I think it speaks to what we focus on in Rite of Passage. It's just like the utter simplicity of this, of like, you can just look at it and tell. What I like about it is you already know how to do this. And it's not just that. if you ever just listen to a speaker, or if you're speaking well about something, if you were to transcribe what you said, you're at a bar with some friends, you're at a party, hanging out with your parents, talking to them, you will notice that you already do this. You're ready to do it. And so a lot of what we're trying to do in Write a Passage is, rather than just like your 7th grade English teacher just giving you all these new tricks, no passive voice, this thing, that thing. We just want to give you really simple ideas that are very intuitive, that you could just be like, okay, I have these frameworks that I can incorporate, and it's not taking a ton of effort, but that doesn't mean that it isn't super useful. But because it's very intuitive, it's very comprehensive in terms of its ability to speak to so many different kinds of writing that you're going to be doing in your life. And another framework that we always come back to in the course is what we call imitate, then innovate. And what I've realized is that, ironically, the more that we imitate others, the more that we discover our unique style. And I'm going to share some examples first from writing and Hunter S. Thompson, and then show you like Tarantino and stuff. It's cool. You see this, once you see this, you see it all over the place. Hunter S. Thompson handwrote every word of The Great Gatsby multiple times just so what he could feel what it was like to write a world-class novel. And then there's John Cleese of Monty Python fame, who copied jokes that he heard on the radio just so that he could recite them to his friends at school all day. But my favorite story comes from Quentin Tarantino, who's notorious for copying films that he likes. And then what he'll do is he'll sketch similar shots into his own movies. And these visual references to other movies have become one of Tarantino's trademarks.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
And paradoxically, it's because of that copying that Tarantino has a more unique style than just about any film director in the world. And it's from Tarantino that we learned that the road to originality is paved with the inspiration of others. So one of the things that we're going to do in Write a Passage is we're going to look at our favorite writers and also like our favorite musicians. And we're going to say, what do they have in common? And we're going to deconstruct what it is that they're doing. And then we're going to try to bring that into our own writing through this process of imitate then innovate. We have this thing that we call CrossFit for writing. And it's a 2-hour sprint where we take you from an idea to a draft. And we just implement all of these methods in one big bang fusion of ideas. And everyone in the course comes together. We go from idea to draft. And that helps us with the first 2 pillars of write from abundance and write from conversation. But now I want to talk about that third pillar, write in public. So now you've been writing, but the question is, how do you get your ideas read? How do you get those ideas read, right? You've put ideas on paper, maybe you've done that, but how do you get them in front of people? And the first thing that I'd focus on is what I call the public to private bridge. The public to private bridge. So in 2 sentences, basically what you do with this is you grow your audience on public platforms, but then you build relationships on private ones. Grow your audience on public platforms, build relationships on private ones. So your public platforms are things like Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and your private ones are things like email, platforms like ConvertKit, like Substack. And so what's great about public platforms is this is where the people are, right? This is like the conference of the internet. You go, you show up, you meet all these people. You don't have to do much work. They're finding you. Stuff sort of goes viral. It's like a town square. And you can use whatever platform you want. I don't know, TikTok, Hacker News, whatever. There's so many places where you can distribute your ideas. Now, we do focus on writing and we do focus on ideas. So a lot of people in Write a Passage, they're really focused on Twitter, a little bit on Facebook, LinkedIn for sure. But then what you do is you don't just want to have all your ideas only shared on those public platforms, because the problem is you don't actually control those relationships. If you want to reach out to one of your Twitter followers, or I want to download that follower graph, I can't. I could get kicked kicked off the platform tomorrow. So what I do is I encourage people to then sign up for my email list. And so I think of that as a bridge, right? So I'll meet you over here, get you to sign up, come to email. And now my email list isn't mediated by algorithms or stuff like that. What I've realized is that just because you have attention doesn't mean you have an audience. Attention means you can reach a lot of people. An audience is people who know who you are, who trust you, who you can contact at any time. That's what's really valuable. An audience. An audience. And, you know, there's certain people who do this well, certain people who don't. A couple years ago, there's a platform called Meerkat. And they were like the next big live streaming app. And they were raising a ton of funding. And what happened was Twitter launched a competitor. And all of a sudden, they basically cut off Meerkat's ability to access their social graph. And the company went out of business so fast. And then there's Instagram, which did the opposite. They did a great job. They used Twitter too. I don't know if you remember, it used to be you would share an Instagram on Twitter and it would automatically load, but then there'd be a link. And then they got people to start actually going to Instagram. They built that direct relationship that we want to build with our audiences. And then Facebook had to pay more than $1 billion to buy them because they actually controlled that relationship with people. You know, a lot of people ask about platforms like Medium, and I think that they're great as a public platform. But if you write on Medium, just make sure that there's a link to your email list so that people will sign up for that. You can use Medium, no problem. I mean, I do eventually encourage a personal website, but Medium's great to get that flywheel spinning. But just make sure that you have that email list, because with Medium, you don't own that relationship with people. You don't. It's really important to build that email list. So just to summarize, create value on public platforms, direct your audience to private platforms, and then store value in your email list. All online audience building is that simple. It really is. I mean, that is the 80-20 of it. But it just requires showing up, making it happen. But then the ultimate goal of writing online is to build a person monopoly. And so a person monopoly has 4 things in common. It's unusual. So you have skills and knowledge that isn't normally found together. My friend Ed Lattimore is in the house, and he's a physicist and a boxer. I don't think that there's a lot of really high quality boxers who also know physics and math at the level he does and who can speak so intelligently. That's an unusual, that's a weird person monopoly, but it's got to be weird. I say that as a full compliment. And then they should be complementary. And so you have different skills that are reinforcing and they're amplifying each other. You then get that harmony of ideas rather than the cacophony of things that don't work well together. Helps to have things that are experiential. You know, Ed, he boxed and he went into the fights. He stepped into the ring. He did all the work to go prepare for that. And if I want to write about my experience boxing, I can't just go look it up on Google. There's a certain experiential wisdom that comes with getting punched in the face a couple times. He knows that. I don't. So I can't compete with him there. Whereas other skills, you can go online and you can kind of learn about a lot of those things pretty quick. And so those person monopolies, because it's easy to learn, it's not experiential, they take longer. You know, it was crazy. Now that I'm thinking about it, we had a woman in the last cohort. She's been an assistant for 4 different, I think, billionaires. I honestly think billionaires. Okay, Will's giving me the head nod. 4 billionaires. That's crazy. Like, a lot of people don't have that experience. So she can write about that mindset, that mentality. And it's interesting. That's experiential knowledge. That is a person monopoly. And then finally, you want things that are specific. So a couple examples from Rite of Passage, we have Packy McCormick, who you might know. He's probably the fastest growing business analyst in the world right now in terms of an audience. He was in our very first cohort. Sent his first newsletter, first article in Rite of Passage. Now he has a fund. I think he raised like $8 million. And yeah, signed up for Rite of Passage. And he ended up building this personal monopoly, which you can learn about in a workshop that I hosted with him. And he's just business analysis, but not boring. Then is sort of focused on that business and brings that together. He's not boring, business and analysis, the synthesis of those three. And he's funny. I mean, if I were to add a fourth thing, he's funny, brings in pop culture. Then there's Ana Fabrega, same thing. First article, first newsletter in Rite of Passage. And she's in the synthesis of education, kids, and games. That's what she's really focused on. Looked up today, 127,000 Twitter followers. Unbelievable. She's going to have the world's largest audience for childhood education just a couple years. And it's just following exactly the things I've been talking about for the last 48 minutes. And so you can learn to write and build an audience of like-minded people. I mean, absolutely. We've seen it done so many times now. And what's crazy is I think that there's a lot of people, a lot of really influential writers who just aren't seen as writers. I think of Emily Weiss at Glossier. She got started with a blog called Into the Gloss. Now she runs a multi-billion-dollar company. There's Bill Gurley, who was one of the most successful venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. He was the guy who literally invested in Uber for Benchmark, which is one of the most successful VC investments of all time. I mean, 1996, he was writing online. That's where he got a start. Nathan Barry, founder of ConvertKit, worth, I think, $300 million. Got his start as a creator. And so just to recap all this, the Rite of Passage method is really built on three things: write from abundance, write from conversation, and write in public. And if you're interested, pop into the Rite of Passage podcast, where I'll talk so much more about these things. And you can learn about all these specific ideas. Check out Rite of Passage. And I just wanted to end with a video about that I think builds on a lot of the things that we talk about and focus on in Rite of Passage. Believe it or not, I'm not a natural born writer. I had to go through a grueling process of figuring out this craft all for myself. But then once I did, I realized that writing online came with a whole list of benefits that nobody told me about. I experimented with the craft of online writing by writing on my own website. And once I did, I was inspired by all the people that I met and amazed by all the opportunities that came to me. These serendipitous things that happened, and I felt like I'd found a secret that nobody was talking about. Fast forward to today, and I've published hundreds of articles on my site and grown my Twitter following to more than 200,000 followers. And this year, my site will have more than 3 million page views. Rite of Passage is a distillation of everything I've learned about this craft of writing online, from finding new ideas to writing from conversation, to then putting ideas onto the page, to then fighting through that fear of hitting publish. I've been there too. To then finally watching your ideas spread out into the world and attracting an audience of people who love your work. Because with the stroke of a pen, it's never been easier to build your network, improve your thinking, and create opportunities for yourself. And when it comes to teaching Rite of Passage, I think about my own childhood and my own education. My favorite teachers were always the enthusiastic ones who had high standards for their students too. And as your teacher, I'm gonna hold you to an incredibly high bar, and I'm gonna show you both who you can become and what you can achieve if you show up and commit to writing online. No longer do you need the support of a big media company to help your ideas spread. You can build your own following now. And in Rite of Passage, I'm gonna show you how. Just a couple decades ago, the world of publishing was limited to full-time writers and media moguls. But now anybody can build an audience. And anybody who shows up, works consistently, and commits to improving their craft, they can have more reach than the kings you read about in history books. And in Rite of Passage, I'm gonna show you how to do that.
All right, guys, want to move into some Q&A. Have a bunch of good questions in the chat. So David, first thing, just talk to people who are on this call. They're really enjoying what you're saying. They believe in what you're saying, but they're scared to get started. They're scared to put their name behind their words out on the internet. What do you say to people who are scared to hit publish and get started?
I had a guy who sold his company for 8 figures email me that yesterday. It's funny that you asked that. And I have a call with him in the morning tomorrow. He's scared to start writing online. He's terrified. And so what I would say is, honestly, at some level, okay, it's funny. I think a lot of things with publishing are sort of paradoxical like this. Like, you both want to honor that fear, and you also want to sort of push past it. You know, Seth Godin has this great line where he talks about marathon runners, and one time there was a guy who won the marathon, and what happened was he gets to the finish line, and a little kid runs up to him and he goes, wow, 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 how'd you do it? How'd you do it? He's so excited. The little kid, he's like, how do you not get tired when you run? And the marathon runner goes, of course I get tired. I just know where to put the tired. And so, Will, to your question there, what matters isn't writing without fear. What matters is that you know that fear will always be there, and you do it anyway. You have the courage to continue to march through it. That's the first thing. But the second thing, which is sort of the opposite answer, is that in Write a Passage, we encourage people to think about writing us under a pseudonym, to think about publishing just to the Write a Passage group, but maybe on a private Notion page or something. And that way you're publishing, you're getting your ideas out and heard, and Write a Passage is big enough where people are going to find stuff that you're doing. You're going to actually feel the internet, but sort of scaled down in terms of the people that you meet, get you publishing. And my friend Nick Majuli, who's about to publish his first book, Just Keep Buying. He's one of the biggest personal finance writers in the world right now. For, I think, his first, I don't know, maybe like 4 months or something, he wrote totally under his pseudonym of Dollars and Data. And only once he began feeling confident writing under his real name did he change that. And so I'll say to that is that there's absolutely solutions, but you both need to learn to dance with that fear like the marathon runner. And then we got to find some solutions for you to play with that fear so that you're not crippled by it.
Yeah. I'll add too, there's something different about facing that fear when you're with a peer group of a couple hundred other people around the world who are going through that exact same fear with you in real time in Write a Passage, right? You have a group of people who are mostly publishing for the first time. Some people have published in the past and stopped. Maybe some people have been publishing, but most people in the course are overcoming that same fear. You do it together, talk about it in live sessions, in breakout rooms and mentor groups. So having that peer group often is what it takes to help push you over that edge and get started and get on that trajectory to writing consistently. David, great question in the chat from Adam Sachs. Had a question about, you mentioned research is this big component to effective writing. What should we do to prepare for joining Write a Passage in the months leading up? Do you want to talk about this concept of ambient research and just how we think about research and drawing from your own ideas when you write online?
Yeah. So what we're going to do in Write a Passage is we're going to spend the first week helping you build an information capture system. And then what is going to happen is you're going to basically always be doing research. And what's funny is I say that with a little smirk because you're not even going to realize that you're doing research. So yesterday I was reading a really beautiful book called Divine Beauty by John O'Donohue, my favorite poet. He's an Irish poet. And there's just little lines that I highlight. And I'm always just saying, okay, I'm going to just do the little step of highlighting and saving. And what I'm doing there is passively collecting ideas, doing research for some future piece that I'm going to write. And then what happens is all that happens ambiently throughout the course of your day. I'm always saving and collecting ideas. And then what happens is you start writing, like Michael was saying earlier, you look, okay, within that soup of ideas, he said, what can I then put into words? Where do things come out? And then at the end, maybe you got to do a little bit of research at the end. And that then is sort of adding just a little bit of stuff to just make sure that things are really solid. But in school, that really deliberate research where you have to sort of block out days of your life in order to work on something, that can now happen in the background ambiently so that you can get a lot more writing done, both at a higher quality and with way less time.
Totally.
Will, anything you'd want to add to that?
I just emphasize the support you get before the course starts. So if you join the course now, the enrollment window is open now till February 21st. The moment you enroll in the course, there's a 45-minute video from David walking you through how to set up your own information capture system. You may have never had this before. It's using software tools to help you capture the best of what you read, the best of your own ideas, and then ways to organize that information in a way that you can then use it to fuel your articles. So you'll have several weeks before you start writing on March 2nd to get this system in place. So when the course starts, you have this wealth of ideas to draw from as you write. So there's several weeks beforehand to get ready before you actually start writing on March 2nd, which is the first day of class.
One of the things I want to emphasize here is often you won't actually know when you're doing ambient research what the final product is going to turn into. But sometimes you can just pick up on something and it's like, boom, I'm going to go for it. So for example, I have this note in my Evernote about Amazon. I've collected so many things in the last 5 years about Amazon. You know, there's graphs and all these sorts of things. And like, I don't actually read that much about Amazon. It's just like Amazon's a pretty big company. And if you read a decent amount, you end up just finding interesting ideas and you save them. So what happened was one day it came out in the news that Bezos was going to step down as CEO of Amazon. So what I did was I instantly said, okay, that's perfect. I'm going to do a thread and I'm just going to share the best things I've learned from him. And so I wrote this thread of all these highlights, quotes, ideas, whatevers, and I put them into one specific place, and took me, I think, an hour to do all that because I'd done all the ambient research without even realizing I was preparing for this thread. And so what you realize is it gives you this optionality in your life where you can take on and be adaptive to different projects and different opportunities that you didn't expect. And that then gives you a huge advantage as an online writer, lets you take on projects at both a higher quality and with less time.
Fantastic. David, question from Dan Trink in the chat saying he's got a writing habit, publishing a couple times a week, wants to grow his email list from 4,000 to 40,000. Is there a place for him in Write a Passage? Maybe mention Josh from last cohort or any other thoughts on your mind there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, Write a Passage has a lot of really high quality people. In our last cohort, we had Josh Constein, who I think is the most cited tech journalist of all time. If you just type in Josh Constein Facebook, you'll see that he was there. And we have a lot of people in the course who I would say already have some solid traction and are really just trying to turn it up. And we have some advanced support for people like you to make sure that you're pushing through the roadblocks. Chances are that you are going to have super specific problems and challenges that we're going to have to work through together. And Write a Passage can absolutely be an answer to that. But also, I wouldn't be surprised if you've done a lot of these things, sort of figured certain things out intuitively. And then what we're going to do is, based on the things you've already done, map on some framework so that you can be more intentional about the things that you're already doing and squeeze more juice from the fruits you already have.
We had a question in the chat. Just, if I want to learn to write better and not worry about building an audience or monetizing, is this the right course for me? I'll briefly say there's sometimes 3 different buckets we like to think about with Write a Passage. Helping you build your tactics of writing. So that's your systems for capturing information, building your website, system for sharing your ideas. That's one. A second one is just the craft of writing. So how do you actually write sentences that have rhythm, that sound like music, that are beautiful and compelling? The third is your perspectives. How do you think about your goals with writing, your personal monopoly, things like that. So we do focus on the craft of writing. That's one of the sort of 3 main components of the course. But David, I'll let you add any other thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, I want to kick it over to Michael. So Michael is our director of content, runs our stewards program. We have a team of editors who are going to work directly with you. And Michael is the man of the writing craft. And so he's going to talk a little bit about how exactly we do that.
Yeah, totally. So basically we make sure everyone gets like a really high bar of feedback. And what we even do is we basically do visual annotation on top of many of your essays, right? So basically students submit drafts. In addition to the Google Docs inline comments, we create visuals similar to the ones you saw before so that you can very quickly and instantly use color and shapes to learn these patterns about rhythm or voice or repetition, right? So basically, it's a really frictionless and just fun way to learn these concepts that are typically academic.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I'll add to that is a lot, like if you are asking that question, you want to get better at the craft of writing, it's because for whatever reason, the way that you learned writing, certain things didn't stick. And so we try to make sure that we're the opposite of traditional writing education. Traditional writing education is very left-brained. It's focused on grammar and it's focused on syntax and rules and stuff like that. And it's really sort of activates that part of your mind that's like focused on specifics and details. What we've tried to do is basically counter that with the opposite. And so for us, it's about play, it's about rhythm, it's about sound and shape, it's about intuition. And it's then about sort of graphs and images like that. Don't just write words, write music chart. And the reason that we do that is to just get you into a more intuitive state of mind. I mean, if you're here right now, you're super intellectually curious. Think of all the different stages that you had to do in order to get here, right? Like you're not just some normal person who's just finding this. You're working and you're interested in ideas. And so we believe that you have a sense of what good writing is. And what we want to help you do is identify what good writing is, deconstruct it, have conversations, and then through that, become a much better writer. But you're not going to be learning about how to think about pronouns and how to think about conjunctions and how to think about adverbs. If that's what you're looking for, go to another writing class.
Got some questions just about the cadence of the course, sort of what standard that students will be held to. Something I just want to emphasize, the course starts March 2nd. It goes till April 6th. Every single week, you'll be assigned an article on Wednesday. You'll have 5 days to write a draft. You'll submit your draft, exchange feedback with students, get feedback from the Rite of Passage team, and submit your published version by the following Wednesday. So it's a 1-week cycle. You write one article, and you do that 5 times. So it's going to be 5 articles in 5 weeks. We have a strong community. We're really proud of people who come in and make friends. We love talking about the community, but it's not just community and fun and making friends. There's something at the center of it all, which is writing and ideas. And so when you join Rite of Passage, you're going to meet people, you're going to make friends, but you're also going to be held to a really high standard. So David, add anything you want to onto that, but just talk about the cadence of the course.
Yeah. I want to focus on standards first. I think that, so we had our first meeting with our mentors and we have, well, how many people do we have running this course? I mean, we have our full-time team, we have 13 mentors, we have 8 community stewards. I mean, that's already 25.
Well, we've added these new coaches. So folks who fall behind or need some extra support have one-on-one coaches to hop on calls with. I think we hit 30 this cohort. We've never had that many. So there's 30 people.
We have 30 people who are part of the Rite of Passage team. And we do that so that you can get detailed feedback. And every single one of those people, I was talking to our mentors last Friday, welcoming them right at the beginning. And you know what the first thing I said was? First thing I said was, I've gone to other online education programs. I've gone to other training programs. I have friends who are, say, personal trainers, same thing. And they're all saying to me something similar, which is that the world is afraid to have high standards. The world is afraid to push people. The world is afraid right now to go to somebody and to say, you can do better. And to really be honest about that. And in Rite of Passage, what we want is a culture of rigor and a culture of discipline and a culture of standards on one side, but also a culture of joy, laughter, and play. And we try to take both of those, find the way that we can integrate them, bring them into harmony, and use that to elevate people as writers. We want you to be absolutely exceptional at your craft. We want you to build an audience. We want you to have a personal monopoly. We want you to be writing regularly. It's good for us. It's good for you. Absolutely. And Rite of Passage is a place where you're going to be pushed. So if you're looking for a place where people are just sort of half-assing it, you want people to take it easy on you, don't join Rite of Passage. Honestly, we don't want to have you. But if you're looking to really surround yourself with serious people who are seriously trying to level up, come join us. You'll get a lot from it.
Totally. Just a couple of minutes here. I want to talk to the people who are on this workshop, interested in the course, perhaps on the fence, excited about what you're saying. It's a big investment, perhaps have some doubts. First of all, number one, I want to say, I'm about to put an email in the chat, support@riteofpassage.school. You can email us with questions. We want to hear from you. If you have concerns, doubts, hesitations, you can even, if you have the right type of question, we can jump on a call and chat with you for 15 minutes. But David, just any thoughts for folks who, see that this is a big investment, potentially big opportunity, maybe talk about people like Brohoon and Pamela and students who have sort of trust fallen into the internet, or just any thoughts on people who are right on the edge thinking about the course?
Yeah, we'll end it with this. John Doerr, the famous Silicon Valley venture capitalist, said that the internet is the largest legal wealth creation tool in human history. And there's so much out there about the downsides of the internet. The turmoil, the division, the strife, the fighting. There's so much out there about it. And all of our lives have been irrevocably shaped by the internet. And that's what everyone's talking about. But you also have something in your pocket where you can tap with your fingers on glass and at no cost whatsoever reach billions of people. We've seen that what the internet does is it's a matching tool. eBay connects buyers and sellers. Uber, I want to ride, somebody has a car and some free time. Airbnb, I'm traveling to Budapest, I need a place to stay, somebody has an open spot. But there's also an opportunity for the internet to match you with future career opportunities. Maybe you're feeling stuck in your career. You're working a job that you hate. You're not getting paid as much as you need to. You're struggling to pay the bills and you're pissed off. Maybe you want to start a business and you're worried that you're going to give away tons of your company to venture capitalists, or you just don't know how you're going to get those initial customers. Well, you have an audience and that becomes a lot easier. A lot of the risk in starting a business goes away. And then the final one is when I started writing online, I was so frustrated. I was in college and I was so interested in ideas. I'm just intoxicated by new ways of thinking about the world, new frameworks, new concepts. And so I'd sit home and I'd watch videos on YouTube with incredible lecturers. I'd read articles, read books, and I'd go try to talk to people in my physical life, the people that I was hanging out with, and no one wanted to talk about these ideas with me. I felt like I was trying to live a noble life and I felt insane for trying to do so. And what happened was writing online cured that intellectual loneliness for me. And it cured that intellectual loneliness because I put ideas out into the world that I cared about. And now I can show up to a workshop like this where 1,600 people sign up because of an idea that I just had that I put out in the world. And all of us here, hundreds of people still, we're all united around that same thing. So ask, what is it that you want to share? What is the idea that you uniquely have? And come join us in Rite of Passage and help build that for yourself. And then eventually for others. Great seeing you all. Hopefully in Rite of Passage. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.